Thank you, computer voice. And we will be popping up this wonderful recording on our psychology at work.blog YouTube shortly. So, oh my goodness, this is from a previous introduction yesterday. If you want to get qualified in Hogan. So, a little bit about me is that I'm pretty obsessed with psychometrics. I profiled my wife with 2 assessments before I proposed. And it's true what they say about marriage. It's psychological. One is a psycho, the other one's logical. And I'm the psycho of that relationship. So aren't you lucky for the next 45 minutes? But who's counting? So I'm pretty obsessed with this stuff. We also run a thing called Psychometric Academy. So if you want to have more regular sessions on psychometrics in your life, please join. It's monthly CPD sessions on everything to using psychometrics. We have discounts with publishers. We give you different assessments to complete if you wish for all for very reasonable price a year. And we also run events on personality and psychology, and we run PsyPubs. So as discussed, please follow us on LinkedIn. Here's my page. Always happy to connect. And you can just find me as the Chief Neuroticism Officer. As far as I know, I'm still the only one on LinkedIn. But with so many Chief Happiness Officers, I thought somebody needs to fly the flag for negative emotional affect. So agenda for today. So we'll do little introductions. We already done that. We'll discuss about personalities within teams, exercises to use, and we'll also discuss online, in-person, and hybrid. And then we'll have a little bit for takeaways. So isn't that fun for 45 minutes? So I hope you have coffees and water topped up because nobody canceled Maslow. So now what I want you to do is I want you to log into Mentimeter so you can participate in this as well. So you can either scan the cheeky QR code you see in front of you or click on that hyperlink I just posted into your chat. Jill, you looking pensive. Did it work?
So, hang on. I'm operating on my mobile and I'm trying to sort out my LinkedIn profile and put it in the chat at the same time.
Absolutely. So if you open up your LinkedIn profile, you click more, share, and there it is.
Yeah, I'll get there eventually.
Perfect. Perseverance and conscientiousness. So, any particular questions you have today you want to explore? We already discussed a few, but do you have any burning questions that you felt were not touched upon? So you can just type it in or unmute yourself and jump in. Team assessments, right? We will first thing we'll cover is the different assessments you can use for team workshops, and it's just a snippet. Best practice approach, hopefully we'll do them. How to use in teams, personality trait interplay. That's the most funnest bit, to be honest, because none of them exist in isolation. So, for example, I was once working with somebody who was very low neuroticism, very high extroversion, a happy chappy. And my favorite when working one-to-one with clients is to ask them, how do you deal with their opposites? So I go, how do you deal with your more emotionally dynamic colleagues? Because Nikita, it's so simple. I don't know why you ask. When they come to me with their emotions, I tell them 2 things. And they go, which are? He goes, 1, nobody died. 2, they should grow up. And I go, but what if this doesn't work? He goes, I just sent them to HR. As my friend Paul says, it's very hard to define what emotional intelligence is, but it's very clear when people don't have it. So teamwork with assessments, how to engage all members of the team. Yes. Well, yeah, who are introverted. This is really interesting because how can you actually create a team development day which focuses on different people and different communication styles? So as far as introversion and extroversion concerned, to me, it's a split between group and one-to-one time. So what I will always do before doing an exercise with a team, I would ask them first to pair up one-to-one and then share with a group. Because the issue is that if you ask a group a question, you'll have 80-20% split. You'll have 20% of your participants doing 80% of the talking. And if you only put questions to the group, some people might never answer or speak up. So they never talk throughout the day. But if you first pair people up and say, discuss this question, and then ask them to share with the group, this way everybody gets to talk about this question first. So I suggest the top tip is get people communicating one-to-one and then sharing with the group. So I'll give you an example. My first exercises in personality workshop start with quite simple. So first, of course, we get the kickoff from the lead. Why we're doing this? Because it's all like the lead needs to explain why it's relevant. I recently chatted with one of the biggest providers of online learning, and they said there's two key things for learners' engagement. One, it has to come from top down that this is important and relevant. And two, people need to understand how it's relevant to their careers and progression. If you don't have these two things, it's very hard to get buy-in. So this is why I always talk with the lead ahead of time. And one of the key things I kind of really want to kind of stress to the leads I'm working with, please don't use the phrase, I want this to be a high performing team. Like, please just don't use that. Because there's people here who have lost nights, who have spent time away from their kids and family to make this, and they're really working hard. They already think they're high performing. So the moment you say, I want this to be a high performing team, it was just a slap in their face. They're not high performers. And maybe not the best way to start. So then I would pair them up and I say, look, you have 3 minutes each to answer a simple question. How would you describe your personality? So each person has 3 minutes without interruption to answer that question. And then the other person plays back what they're hearing if they're just a group of people. But if they're an intact team, they also play back what they're seeing in that person's behavior. So 3 minutes each, how would you describe yourself? The other person plays back what they're hearing and seeing. And then I would ask people like, what words did you use, etc. What comes to your mind, like, introvert, extrovert, and we'll start building this up. And then I will ask them for an additional minute, discuss in pairs, what do people get wrong about your personalities? And that's what's really fun. Because in a room of 12 people, there's 12 versions of you. There's one how you see yourself, and 11 how other people interpret your behavior. And after they discuss this one-to-ones, I ask them to share it in a group. This becomes really interesting because people go, well, some people think I'm a pain in the ass because I ask too many details. But if I don't have the details, I cannot proceed. Or, people think I'm just argumentative, but really I just want to get to the core of an issue. People think I am like seeking conflict, but really I just want clarity. And people go, oh, it's not just me who gets wrong about them. And it's actually really useful discussion to get this started. And only then would I bring in the psychometric results to discuss. So, because to me, first, how people describe themselves, what do people get wrong about them, is what's important to kind of establish before bringing the psychometric. Because with the psychometric results, I always say, look, in a room of 12 people, 12 versions of you, a psychometric result is just a 13th perspective. It's just a perspective on who you are. It's not who you are, it's just a perspective. And this kind of makes it a bit easier. And when I ask them to open their psychometric results, I would say, okay, how what you're seeing compares to how you just described yourself. So it helps to kind of anchor the results into their self-narrative. It's what I would do in one-to-one as well. If I'd open up the report, I would talk to them and say, well, look, like you described yourself as really creative and imaginative, and this is the top trait this assessment is picking up. So it's in line with how you described yourself. Also, as far as best practice, I would say it's extremely important to stress a very simple thing, is that higher results show it comes more naturally to you. Lower scores, it doesn't mean you can't do that. All it implies, it requires energy. So some things are easier, some things are harder. Because quite often people will go, but I do this, why is it so low? And you go, no, 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 we're not saying you can't do this. All it implies is that it takes a bit of energy. So it's really kind of key how you set this up. And it's very important that you get people talking to each other, sharing, talking to each other, sharing, and then you present the psychometric in my practice. So same as, for example, if you use like props like Lumina Spark Mat, before I used to take it out first, but now I only take it out probably an hour into the session because it takes too much attention away from the workshop. But that's completely your preference. Are more important to acknowledge in the workplace? Well, what's a psychologist's answer to every question? It depends. It depends on the workplace. Thank you, Jill. How to build a team-based personality assessment. Right. We will be hosting a session on bespoke psychometric design on the 21st of May with Jerry Ann. So Jerry Ann has been like head of data and analytics for like design of assessments for SHL, YSC, Saville, and Accenture. So she has been working for this for decades. And right now, there's actually more opportunity to build psychometrics than ever before because you also have hosting platforms, which will do the most painful stuff, which is hosting. How introverts support team and may be overlooked? Absolutely, especially by the high extroverts. Isn't it funny how we already have two questions about introverts and extroverts? How to make personality assessment conversation feel relevant and day to day. See, that's the key thing. The issue is the word assessment, because I think psychometric industry over the last 100 years done something amazing, truly spectacular. And that is they took a concept that everybody's interested in, which is personality. And I even assure you that if you take out your earpods and you walk down the street or you go on public transport or you sit in a cafe and drink coffee and look into the distance, you will hear that word personality being mentioned around you. And it will be mentioned in different contexts. Like, my boss has a strong personality. Or I bought that chair because it has character. Or my cat's personality. Or I love them for their personality. Or I hate their personality. Well, maybe not that one. But the key thing is that people are genuinely interested in personality all the time. This is why there's a zodiac in every newspaper. To me, the zodiac is the first psychometric personality model. 12 types. And Leo is clearly the best. But the key thing here is that we have some sort of a need for these assessments and these models. What the first people think that, with personality, with the zodiac, well, what's in it for me this week? And I mean, it's so popular. Like, you go into Apple News or sometimes other news sources, and one of the top 5 news with everything in the world is like, what do Capricorns have in store this autumn? I mean, this is how popular it is. It's in every newspaper. It's still everywhere else. And it gets even better because what the first question is, what's in it for me? What's the second question? Well, I'm a Leo and I'm on a date with a Capricorn. How's that gonna go? So for some reason, we need these frameworks for both understanding us and relationships with others. And the key thing is that even if you don't use a model, personality models will be used. One of my favorite psychologists in personality is Colin DeYoung, and he was on a podcast, and he says, well, when people find out I'm a psychologist, and especially a personality psychologist at parties, their first question is, are you analyzing me? And he goes, at this point, I need to lie and say, no, of course I'm analyzing you. We're analyzing each other all the time. That's what humans are like. I might be using different models, but we're analyzing each other all the time. And this is, I think, what's really important to grasp when working with teams. People have an innate interest in personality and individual differences. We all do. We're social creatures. It's understandable why. But the moment you introduce psychometrics assessments, people's eyes just glaze over. They get bored. I've been working in the field for 12 years. I must have 5, 6 invitations to complete psychometrics in my inbox right now. Do I do them? No. Why would I do this to myself? And and also for clients, another key thing, top tip, don't send psychometrics the day before the workshop. I recently had a workshop approved 3 days before it started. It was approved on Friday. We have a workshop on Tuesday. I was happy because the client is paying. But they're like, okay, Nikita, send us the link so I can send it to my colleagues. I'm like, no, we're not using full assessments today. And they're like, why not? And said, my first communication to your colleagues won't be, can I take half an hour of your weekend? This is not going to set a good psychological contract with each other. We're going to use freebie tools on the day, which your company already uses. And then if people want to complete the full assessments, we will make it available. So, right. Any questions so far? Reflections? Thoughts? I think this was 10 to 15 seconds. Oh, there's something in the chat, something in the chat, something in the chat. I tell people I'm a dolphin trainer. Fair enough, man, whatever floats your boat. Okay, so next question. Do you use psychometrics?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Jill. Which ones do you use?
EQI2, Hogan, Strength Scope, and not for a while, but Savile Wave.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good combination of
Oh,
different assessments.
and
Oh,
as an organization, we also use Team Salient.
oh, that's very salient of you.
Mm.
So we can see that we don't have a standard distribution today. We have a quite a self-selecting sample going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. So on that note, we already have some of the assessments mentioned, but if you can also participate and add a few more, That would be very much appreciated. So, anyone? Let me just
Just typing.
Oh, perfect. Let me just click present. The system is playing up. Okay, we have 4 replies. Way, Spark, NPI 40, Disk, FireOB, Savile Workroll, Strength Scope, Team is Salient, Insights, chosen by the org. Interesting little caveat there. Spark, FireOB, Talent Predicts. By the way, I will pop into chat that we had an interview with Peter Saville, and it's recorded. It's on our YouTube channel. And we also had interview with one of our colleagues who knows FireOB inside out, Roy Childs, and it's also there. So you can definitely check those out. So Thomas International Podium as well. By the way, feel free to take a screenshot of this. So if you want to then look into different psychometrics, here's, a starter for 10. So there's, oh yeah, we can skip that. What have you found to be the benefit of using personality assessments with teams? Feel free to also unmute yourself and share. Dina, what are your thoughts? Okay, we already have a few replies. So we have opening conversations up. Self-awareness grows, pull back the curtains on interpersonal dynamics, get conversations quickly, evidence-based, building psychological trust. Okay, so you also use the Lencioni model. Fun, let's not forget that. Focus. People love to talk about themselves. Yep, same as, how do you know somebody's a narcissist? They go, it's enough about me. What do you think about me? Managing career expectations, better understanding of other individual styles. Yep. And all of this, I could not agree more with you. There's so many different benefits to actually using psychometric assessments with teams. Okay, present again. Yep. Improve.
Nikita,
Go for it.
there's one more thing here. I haven't logged in, so I'm just going to say that you give them a language to talk about these things. For me, that's the most important aspect because most teams don't have a language to talk about these things at all. And by introducing a psychometric, all of a sudden they can actually have a constructive conversation about what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Per. Why does this keep switching back? Okay, now I can see. Great. Yeah, we do give them a language because before people use a language, but they don't really know what it is because quite often people will use extroversion, introversion, but mean completely different things. But I would say, yeah, perfect. To me, whenever I ever start a workshop, my psychological contract is very simple. I say, look, if by the end of today, we can be a couple of percent more curious about ourselves and others, and a couple of percent less judgmental about ourselves and others, I would count this as a success. So it's just getting a bit of curiosity going. And one of my favorite things is when people go, we want to learn how to give feedback. And I go, wonderful. And I go, show of hands, how many of you have ever been asked how you like your feedback in your careers? And not so many hands go up. And even if you ask them, like, how often was that? And they go, maybe once or twice. And it's fascinating that we don't actually ask our colleagues how they like their feedback. And this one of my favorite quotes is by Allport, the Allport and Oddbird that the research led to the Big Five. He used to say, if I want to know something about somebody, I ask them. And it's really simple. It's like, how would you like your feedback? And people go, well, that's a difficult question. I'm not sure. Then you can go, well, how you don't like your feedback? And I don't like it in public. Okay, great. Because here's a little trick. If people don't know don't want to say how they like something, ask them how they don't like it. Because as a wonderful psychotherapist, Esther Perel says, behind every criticism lies a wish. So you can kind of identify what they don't like about it. So, what are the risks of using personality assessments in groups? Go for it, Tom.
Well, I think stereotyping is the biggest risk. So I think that there's always been a tension for me with any assessment, which is simplicity to understand it, but then not having so simple that you become stereotypes. So it's navigating that balance is one of the hardest things I find.
Mm-hmm. Yep, stereotyping, labeling, anything else?
I've been working with a couple of PhD students in a team lately, and they got so stuck into the technical aspect around what's the validity and all those things. They just went completely sideways into that area. So that's something that needs to be managed in some settings.
Absolutely. With validity, reliability, just have a document on hand that you can email to them. Or a YouTube link, because quite often you have the discussions there as well. So you can address this right then and there. So you can say, okay, you can discuss it and you can come back to me. But you have put the ball into their own court, because that's how they and ultimately that's probably because if you use, for example, tools like Spark, they'd be probably scoring like evidence-based and cautious. So, and they just kind of help themselves. Yes, Rachel.
I think with a few people I've met over the years, that if some people have a bit of a kind of predisposition to being quite anxious about themselves or aspects of their personality, it can be quite triggering for some people to actually see that in a profile. So I think there is something about the kind of the care that you need to take to make sure that people are able to hear the messages clearly.
Absolutely. And it's part of their personality. So self-consciousness on the neuroticism scale. There's even a facet for that. And the key thing is it's how you present a psychometric. So I'll give you an example. Presentation starts even earlier than that, especially with large groups. So once we're working with over 100 engineers, and the HR said, we don't care what assessment you use. And they're like, okay, can you tell us why? It's good because they never complete them. So we don't care. They never do them. So, go nuts. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. So what we did, we used an assessment. So first we discussed this with a head team. We profiled them. We gave them one-to-one feedback. We gave them a team session. After this, the leadership presented their experience at the next town hall and said, this is what's coming down the line. Then we had a Q&A session. So anybody can drop in. Even before the link went out, we had a discussion with the group. And again, standard distribution was right. We had about 20, 30 people attending. But it's really important that you get the most critical people on board first, because if you don't, they will pull people in the middle towards their camp. And that's when it becomes an issue. So, and the questions were very legit about the issues, because Cambridge Analytica was happening at that point, and people were wondering, are you going to sell our data? How is the data going to be used? Who's going to see it? What the point of this? And all of these questions we answered, and we also put the most salient questions into the introductory email. So we sent out an email. Not only did the Q&A informed how we wrote it, but we also added a Q&A section after the link to address like how the data is going to be handled. So we used this experience as a data gathering to personalize the email. And we had then 3 calls between completion and the team workshop for the whole group, where people could drop in and they could ask questions about their profiles in as much or as little detail as they felt comfortable. And we had 50% completion within 24 hours of the link going out, and we had 100% completion within 72 hours. Not only that, but some people printed their profiles on T-shirts to the team day. So the question is how do you deal with this resistance? And how do you actually build up that psychological contract? And how you can use every touch point you have with the client as email, webinar, all this stuff to build that rapport. Because some people had really weird experience with psychometrics in the past. And we need to honor that. Because they had maybe not such an ideal experience, or their friend had not an ideal experience. And, team builds come with their own set of stereotypes people have against them. So there's a lot of things you can kind of deal with this. I will also put a little link into chat. It's a comedy sketch, Why Everybody Hates Team Builds by Foils, Arms, and Hog. And it's like a kind of satire. Oh, Dale, it seemed to resonate with you. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Did you check out the comment section to that video?
Oh, I have not, no.
Oh, that's my favorite part. It's all the people complaining about their worst experience on team builds and exercises they ever had.
Okay.
They also have a really good session. It's called Honest Personality Test, where it's actually a really well-researched feedback session where a person, based on psychometric results, and the person comes in, it's like, what you gonna tell me? I'm an introvert or an extrovert? Because no, you're an asshole. You know, top 5th percentile of assholes globally. And it's a brilliant one. Again, check out the comment section because it's actually people sharing their experience with psychometrics, just to kind of give you a flavor. So this is what we're going with. And as far as stereotypes, what Tom alluded to, this is one of the best things about psychometrics and one of the worst things about psychometrics. Because what psychometrics, self-report psychometrics ultimately measure is they're measuring your self-narrative. Because right now, a psychometric is not rocket science, really. You have 140 or 250 questions like this. I am competitive. Score from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. Person goes 5, strongly agree. We norm it, 99th percentile, bomb. And then their report says, you are competitive. And the coach goes, you're a competitive person. And the client goes, you know me so well. Like, really? Like, seriously? And we just ask like 250 or 500 items on that way. And then we go, so ultimately, all we're measuring is a self-report. It's the self-narrative a person has about themselves. It's a story we tell ourselves about who we are. The issue is that we don't update it that very often. We update software on our computers, on phones, on everything, on our printers, and maybe if you have a smart fridge, you update it on your fridge as well. But the key thing is, how often do we update who we think we are? Not that often. And when people see changes in us, which we disagree with, like when my wife tells me, like, Nick, you're being disagreeable. I go, no, I'm not. And we discard it. And this is a key issue with psychometrics. They can either help people to self-grow and update their narrative, or they crystallize it. And this is down to the practitioner, how you use it. And they both crystallize the narrative for themselves and others. It's like, I'm not an asshole, I'm a red. Or, I told you Barbara's neurotic. It's you can use that knowledge to reinforce stereotypes. And if you give people a really big psychometric report and not enough time to go through, the chances of misinterpretation go up. So one of the key reasons I stopped using full reports with 2-hour workshops, because you can't go through the full report and you give a lot to misinterpretation. Some tools can address this by giving a shorter version, such as with Luminous Spark, you choose which pages you include. So you have 90 pages to choose from. So if you want to use, let's say, you can create a 10-page report that you can go through. And also make sure you go through the questionnaire, both the questions and the answers and the report. What I mean by this is that if you're using psychometrics, go through the questions which you're asking your clients. If they don't make sense to you, they won't make sense to your client. And it doesn't matter what your psychometric publisher says, like, this construct measures sociability, and it's like the item is, I don't like video games. It's like, the description of the facet or the aspect or the factor can look so delicious and wonderful, but when you look at the facets, you just go, what the hell is, the questions go, what the hell is that? Like, this has nothing to do with anything. So make sure you know the questions off by heart, if possible, or you at least read them a couple of times. Also, what's really important when you start using a psychometric is have the items printed out with you during a workshop. So if people go, I disagree with this facet, and you go, oh, what does this mean for you? Well, what sort of questions were asked? And go, okay, this is the 3 questions asked. So have the questionnaire with you. So whatever tool you use. So when a client questions you on a particular facet, you can just pull up the items and you can just basically go for it and discuss it. But the key thing is don't leave it up to chance. Whichever page of the psychometric you're using or whatever model you're using, have the time to explain it. There's no point rushing through it. If you have to rush through it, maybe there's no point in using it. So maybe asking people how they describe themselves and what people get wrong about them and what they think is their strengths, derailers, stress response. And you can fold in personality science and psychology as part of your workshop through questions rather than through tools. Okay, any other questions, thoughts on this? All right, how are we doing for time? 15 minutes to go. Okay, things to consider as we discussed. Selecting a personality assessment. Do you really need them? That's the first question. If you selected an assessment, consider freebie models first. Do you need a paid one? Okay, get a paid one. Make sure if you have a paid one, you have enough time to go through the reports. So if a client has money, budget, think of integrating one-to-ones ahead of the team session. So this is one of the things you can do to go through the reports to make sure people are more familiar with it. And they can also share with you what they want to take away from the team build. Building psychological rapport. So I cannot say how important it is to create a meaningful email if you're asking people to complete assessments. Why are we doing it? How's the data going to be used? What are people's possible concerns? Just do it doesn't cut it. Getting people to complete assessments, delivering the one-to-one coaching optional, delivering the session, making the learning stick, as Jill mentioned. So also potentially one of the ways you can make it stick, if your company or your client uses any sort of engagement data. So if they run pulse surveys regularly, like every 3 or 6 months, see if you can correlate it. Use the data that they can share with you ahead of time to design the workshop to address particular areas of concern. And then look at the pulse data on the next 3 months, if it made a dent in it. Because this gives you also a data point you can use. Consider making even a survey pre and post if the client feels up to it, because it will also give you an idea if something has made any impact. Right. Anything you'd like to add to this list? I think this was 10 to 15 seconds, but it's too silent. Andrew, Lowry, help me here.
I just had a quick question, Nikita. I'm very new to psychometrics, but I'm wondering, do different psychometric publishers have like a recording of their best practice of how to debrief their report? Or is that just something you go to the technical manual for?
Oh, it depends. It depends on the publishers. Some publishers do, such as Lumina Learning has a huge document bank and presentations and all of this stuff you can access. So you can download and make it your own. Hogan has funny videos and on their YouTube channel of how people derail. I find those hilarious, but I'm not sure how much clients like it. But doesn't matter because I like them. But that's probably a derailer. And some provide this on open source, such as YouTube or Vimeo, and some not so much. But I think that what's really key, if you do get qualified in a psychometric, one of the key things is establish a connection with other practitioners who already use this assessment, and ask the publisher to connect you with them. So you can say, look, I'm really interested in using this with this kind of group. Do you have any practitioners you can link me up with? And just have a coffee and just discuss, okay, what's your favorite exercises, Do you need anybody to kind of help you with the bags, and can they be a glamorous assistant for the day? And try to learn from other practitioners. So whenever you consider getting qualified in a psychometric, so Andrea with Hogan yesterday said it best, don't get qualified unless you have a project to use it with. Because here's a guilty secret of the industry, 30 to 70% of people who get qualified in psychometrics never use them. And therefore, make sure you have a project. And also, when you consider getting qualified, connect with 5, 7 people on LinkedIn who already use this assessment, preferably within the industry you plan to use it, let's say finance, law, what have you, and ask them about the pros and cons of using this assessment and what sort of exercises they like to do and stuff like that. People love to talk about themselves, as somebody mentioned before, but they also love to talk about their work. And they also like to be Promethean. So they like to carry the flame of knowledge. So if they can kind of like, oh, I will show you the way. You're like, yeah, sure, mate. I disagree with like 90%, but 10% seem to be useful. Now put it in my pocket. So it just really depends how you use it. So moving on, what's the next question? Yeah. So we can skip that one. So we already discussed one. So names, language, utilitarian, validity. So when it comes to psychometrics, especially for group workshops and even one-to-ones. I find it fascinating with psychometric industry is we obsess about validity and reliability, criterion validity, measuring how it correlates with performance, whatever the hell that is, because like there's only one measure of performance. Like, you know, this meta studies, which kind of go performance at work, which combine like 10,000 studies in all sorts of job families. And it's like, oh my God, conscientiousness is correlated. It's like, yeah, I mean, don't get me started. But the key thing is that when it comes to user experience, our clients, we stop at face validity. Does it look legit enough for them to complete? That's it. We don't care if it makes sense to our clients. So what I propose is that we need utilitarian validity. How useful is it? And I think this is why so many people angry about type and color models, because people actually can make sense of those. And they can actually use them. Like to me, if people criticize MBTI, I go, look, if a person has spent half an hour on completing an assessment, an hour coaching session, and a day workshop, and if high introverts realize they need to speak up in meetings a little bit more because other people are not psychic, and extroverts learn to shut up in meetings a little bit more, and they both go away remembering Guns N' Roses song, everybody needs some time on their own, you know, that makes their lives potentially easier forever. And well, as long as they live, of course. But the key thing here is that that was a good use of people's time, and they took away something from it. So it was useful. Also, what materials are available? Oh my God, I misspelled. Available. So mats, cards, apps, you know, exercises, workshop design, such as Laura mentioned, and price, both time and money. If you're sending three psychometric assessments to somebody, and it will take them 60 minutes to complete, if you have 50 people on your workshop, you just ask for 50 hours of people's time, 50 hours to do something. So how are you going to honor that? How are you going to make it useful for them? That is the question, because it is people's time and money we're spending and they're investing. So how do we honor this as facilitators? Okay. Okay. It's just we already discussed this. So psychometric contracts start before the link is sent. So previous experience with psychometrics. Why the psychometric is being used? Opportunity to ask questions, transparent communication, resistance and cynicism is a form of engagement. It took me 6 or 7 years to learn that. So when people like go, this is not me, or, you know, this is like the zodiac. And they go, yeah, which star sign are you? And they go, Capricorn. And they go, it's such a typical thing of a Capricorn to notice. And the key thing is that it's all good. Like people should have resistance. People should have cynicism to psychometric assessments. And if they don't, well, they should develop one, because I always say, who's considered the father of psychometrics? One of the fathers is considered Sir Francis Galton. He's also the father of eugenics. We literally have the same dad. And if we look at human history, after we start seeing other humans as numbers, nothing good happens after this point. So therefore, cynicism and skepticism to psychometrics is perfectly natural. And if anything, we should develop that. So whenever I do workshops on psychometrics and people go, oh, well, you know, I'm cynical about this. And I go, me too. Because most psychometrics tell you more about the author than it does about your client. And I always give them example of DISC. And they go, who here heard of DISC? Show of hands. And, you know, a few hands go up. And I go, who here knows Wonder Woman? I mean, not personally, but knows of Wonder Woman. And more hands go up. And I go, who here knows the polygraph assessment, the lie detector test? More hands go up. And I go, it was the same guy behind all three. So, though Peter Saville thinks he nicked the polygraph from some copper in the States. And I go, it was Marston. Marston wrote a book in 1920s called Emotions of Normal People. And in it he'd proposed that the true aspiration of a man, true aspiration of me and you pair, is to be lovingly dominated by a woman. D stood for need to dominate, S stood for need to submit. Let's look at Wonder Woman and her outfit with her lasso of truth. When she ties you up, you cannot lie. And let's look at what the polygraph requires to be done to you. You're strapped into a chair for the duration of the process. So let's look at this. Strapped into a chair, lasso of truth, lovingly dominated. Now, you don't need to be a Freudian analyst to notice a pattern. Marston had a kink, and there's nothing wrong with having a kink. But maybe DISC belongs in the bedroom, not the boardroom. And maybe it has to do more with eurythmics than it does with psychometrics. Some people want to be used by you. So it's just how you position it. And I think that once you kind of get on this kind of more playful approach to this, you escape the reasons of pigeonholing, people being kind of stereotyped and all of this when you inject a little bit of play into it rather than taking it too seriously. So that would be my kind of top advice as far as using psychometrics within teams. Though you need to be really comfortable with the assessments you're using. And it's okay even if you use DISC or other assessments. If people can understand it, if you present it in the right way, as long as it's utilitarian and useful to the clients. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Hopefully we had some more exercises and discussions, but I'll stop share for now. And I just want to hear from you. Any questions, anything you want to discuss further?
Hi, Nikita. I was just, for me, the problem with the more simplistic tools is not the utility in the session, because actually they tend to have a much more profound impact in session because they're easier to grasp. But it's the long-term impact that they can have, the utility over the long term when they become a little bit constraining. And so I think that, and I've seen that in organizations that really embrace these models. And initially it was like, wow, aha moment, MBTI, I'm thinking particularly. And then over time, it became a little bit constraining and people started to sort of use it. Oh, you're just a J kind of thing. And so I think what is really interesting is how you position it so that people view it as a start point and they can challenge it as they go and they can maybe reinvent themselves.
Absolutely. Well, it could be just the next step. It could be a more detailed assessment you can include. So you can start with the basics, like 4 colors. And then you can move on to like 8 aspects. And then you can move on to 24 qualities. And you can kind of structure this kind of evolution of assessments, because one of the key things that always surprises me is to what extent a company can be using a whole variety of psychometrics at different levels, but they're never connected. And that to me is what's really fun. So for example, they can be using Strength Scope, Hogan, Savile, but they're never linked. And to me, this is what's really interesting. So for example, it's how you use it. So for example, at graduate level, when you have no budget, you can just use the Luminous Splash app and the mat. When you have a bit more budget, you can use the full reports. When you have, because Lumina looks at what you like, what you do too much. Then you can integrate the 3 Hogans, as Bob Hogan calls them, inside, bright side, dark side, which map on really nice to luminous personas. And Hogan starts talking about reputation. And that's a perfect preamble to a 360 assessment like LMAP or Lumina Leader. And it's how those assessments are structured along the career progression of the person within your organization, which usually is completely not linked. And this is to me what's really fascinating, because it's like it just makes sense to link it up. And it's like a journey, and different things become apparent and important to you at different stages of your career. And to me, this is like almost never done. It's just companies spend squillions of cash on psychometrics, and they're never linked internally to how different assessments are linked to a person's career progression. And they're never linked to any data points, such as, how long the company is how long the person is the company, or how long, their engagement scores or attrition within their teams. All of that stuff can be linked quite easily now, and data exported and correlated. And for some reason, it's not done. People just spend assessments on fire and forget. And then when you reach another leader, we'll spend 500 quid on you for more fire and forget assessments. And hopefully something will stick. And then people are wondering why people are so cynical about psychometrics. Just saying. And it doesn't cost anything to link them up. That's another key issue. It's just like, this is why you're doing this. This is how it builds on your previous experience. Who completed, like, even when you work with a team, ask for what's people's previous experience with psychometrics. It might surprise you. Some people might have done assessments and never got feedback. Some people might have their colleagues being made redundant based on the results of questionable assessments. There's just so much, and it doesn't cost anything. That's to me is what's most staggering. It's like so often, what's the first thing on most leadership development my delegates have in common? They have this esoterical question: why am I here? Am I in trouble? Is this a reward? What is this about? And every year I'd go back to HR and says, the delegates don't know why the hell they're here. And they go, well, we told their manager to tell them how lucky they are to be on this program. And like, their managers don't have time, you know, and like, why? You spend hundreds of thousands on a program. And when people come into it, they have no idea what this is about. So even, for example, including a video welcome. So when you send a link to complete the assessment, you can include a video welcome from the lead of the team or person in HR. Why are we doing this? How it's connected to the program? Welcome to our high potential, high performance, you know, insert name program. This is why we're doing this. This is how it's going to be integrated. It's just a video. It takes 10 minutes to record. You can record it on your phone, whack it onto Zoom and include it. It doesn't cost anything. And we spend so much money on that stuff, and we don't build a psychological contract. And if you really want to spice stuff up, like whenever I do one-to-ones ahead of a leadership development program, I go, look, before your program starts, it's 6 months. I would like you to go and talk to a couple of your colleagues and ask them a simple question. I'm on the, so like, you know, which colleagues do you trust? Oh, you know, I trust Beatrice. I go, you know, sit down with Beatrice for a coffee and say, look, Beatrice, I'm on the 6-month leadership development program. If there's one quality you think I would most benefit from developing as a leader, what would it be? And just go and ask a few people to kind of get an idea, or print out a couple of your performance reviews and pick up 2 colors to highlight the strengths with one and development areas with another, and just kind of reflect what you actually want to develop from this program. And it just makes people so much more involved when they're actually there together on the kickoff day. And they already have ideas, they already are passionate about the program. They also send the agenda for the program ahead of time. Like, it's so often people go, but they get a nice printed copy on the day. Yes, and that's great, but maybe some people would also like it in advance. Just send a digital copy, video welcome, and a link to complete a psychometric. It doesn't cost you anything. So stuff like that really kind of makes me excited about team builds. And on that note, we're 2 minutes over. So first of all, we're going to start wrapping up this session. So I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Stop recording.